In a distant part of the galaxy, the elders gathered in their grand council hall. Their race had existed for eons, and their wisdom was unrivaled. They had seen the rise and fall of many civilizations, each one brought to their knees by the power of time and knowledge. Yet today, they faced a threat unlike any they had encountered before: humans. The council chamber was dark, lit only by the glow of distant stars through the wide, translucent walls. At the center of the room, the elders sat, each one old, their faces etched with the marks of time. Their eyes, filled with ancient knowledge, flickered with concern as they listened to the latest reports coming from their scouts. "This is not just another species." Elder Taron, one of the younger elders, spoke, his voice trembling with fear. "Humans... they are unpredictable. Their rapid advancement is unlike anything we've ever seen." Elder Terran, the wisest of them all, leaned forward, his long fingers tapping gently on the table. He was the one who had first sensed the potential of humanity, years before they had even begun to spread beyond their home planet. It was a feeling, a gut instinct that had never failed him. "They are not like us. They do not think in the same way," Terran said, his voice heavy with the weight of truth. "They will rise quickly. Their ambition is limitless. If we do not stop them now, they will change the balance of power in the galaxy." His words hung in the air, thick with the realization of what might happen. The other elders shifted uneasily. In their seats, some nodded in agreement, but many dismissed his warnings. Too confident in their centuries of control over the galaxy. "We have controlled the galaxy for millennia," said Elder Kale, the council's seconding. "Humans are nothing more than a fleeting species, one that will burn itself out just like the others before them. There is no need to panic. We have time." But Terran's face hardened. He had seen this before: an empire too comfortable with its power, too sure of its supremacy. The same mistake had been made by countless civilizations that had fallen. The elders had always prided themselves on their careful planning and patience. They had watched over the galaxy for centuries, but their arrogance now clouded their vision. "You are wrong," Terran said, his voice rising. "Humans are different. Their rapid technological progress is something we cannot ignore. They are reaching beyond their planet faster than we ever imagined. Soon, they will be ready to challenge us. They will push their way into our territory, and when they do, they will be unstoppable." The other elders exchanged looks. Some were uncomfortable with Terran's words, while others remained dismissive. Elder Kale spoke again, his voice smooth but condescending. "Elder Terran, your visions are clouded by your fear. Humans are primitive. They will never rise to challenge us. We have seen their kind before: ambitious, yes, but ultimately self-destructive. Let them build their machines. Let them explore their tiny corner of the galaxy. They will not survive the tests of time." Terran's heart sank, but he knew it was useless to argue further. The elders had already made up their minds. They were too confident in their own power, too sure that their centuries of rule would protect them from the unknown. As the meeting came to a close, Terran left the council chamber, the weight of his burden pressing heavily on him. He knew what was coming, but there was nothing more he could do. The elders had made their choice. They had ignored his warnings, and now the fate of the galaxy was in the hands of humans. Weeks passed, and Terran watched from his observatory as humans expanded their reach into space. They built faster ships, developed new weapons, and made discoveries that shocked even Terran. Yet, the elders remained silent, their arrogance blinding them to the growing danger. Then came the news. The humans had begun colonizing other planets, moving into regions that had long been controlled by the elders. At first it was small colonies, barely noticeable, but soon, the humans began making faster progress, establishing footholds in strategic locations across the galaxy. Their fleets grew larger, more powerful, and the elders continued to underestimate them. One day, a fleet of humans arrived at the edge of the elders' territory, uninvited and unstoppable. The humans did not seek permission. They did not ask for guidance. They simply arrived, ready to claim their place in the galaxy. By the time the elders realized what was happening, it was already too late. The humans had spread like wildfire, expanding beyond their home planet with a relentless drive that no one had anticipated. The elders could no longer ignore the truth. They had been warned, and they had failed to act. Now humanity was here, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The warnings were ignored, and now humanity was unstoppable. The elders had been wrong. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the signs became undeniable. Terran had warned them, but they had dismissed his concerns. Now, humanity's relentless expansion was spreading like a wildfire across the galaxy, leaving no corner untouched. They had underestimated the humans' thinking. Their technology would be primitive, their ambitions fleeting. But humanity was different. They adapted, they innovated, and they conquered. The first time the humans' fleet came into view, the elders dismissed it as a mere curiosity, a small fleet with little power, but it was their mistake to think so. Humans were not like the other species they had encountered over the centuries. Their fleets, though small at first, were a glimpse of what was to come, a harbinger of something far more dangerous. Their first encounter was brief. The elders sent a few ships to engage them, confident that they could show these humans the futility of their efforts. They met the humans in space, surrounded by the cold, lifeless expanse of the void, but the humans didn't flinch. They fought with a fierce resolve, their ships moving faster than any elder could have predicted. They were not afraid. They didn't hesitate. They fought like warriors who had nothing to lose. The battle was over in a flash. The humans took no prisoners, leaving the elder ships floating helplessly in space. The elders, who had once controlled the galaxy with ease, found themselves struggling to comprehend what had just happened. The humans had not only won, they had decimated the elders' forces in a way no one thought possible. Terran stood at his observatory, watching as the human fleet sailed further into elder territory. His heart sank. He had known this would happen, but seeing it unfold in front of his eyes was a different experience. The humans were advancing faster than anyone had imagined. Their ships were sleek, built for speed and efficiency, and their weapons were deadly. Each encounter only revealed more about the humans' resourcefulness and relentless drive. For weeks, the elders tried to gather their forces, regrouping to defend their holdings. But the humans never stopped coming. With each battle, they grew stronger. They learned from their mistakes, adapting quickly, developing new tactics and strategies that outpaced the elders. The humans were no longer just a threat. They were becoming an unstoppable force. At the heart of it all was one thing: humanity's refusal to surrender. Unlike other races that might have retreated when faced with overwhelming odds, the humans fought back with everything they had. They never gave up. They never hesitated. Every loss was met with a new push forward, a new strategy, a new plan. Their resilience, their drive to survive, was what made them so dangerous. One of the elders, a high-ranking official named Kale, finally acknowledged what Terran had been saying all along. He had been watching the human progress in silence, unwilling to admit that they were capable of such feats. But as he observed the humans, it became clear that they were no ordinary species. The elders' wisdom had failed them. They had underestimated the power of humanities. Where we should have listened, Kale muttered to himself as he stood at his station watching the human fleet grow larger. We should have seen this coming, but it was too late. The elders were no longer in control. They had failed to act in time. The humans were already entrenched in the galaxy, taking planets, colonizing systems, and building their strength. The elders had let their arrogance cloud their judgment, and now they were paying the price. As the humans began to claim more and more territories, the elders finally realized that they were no longer dealing with a primitive species. Humanity's rapid technological advancement, combined with their sheer determination and adaptability, had made them a force unlike any the galaxy had seen before. The elders could no longer rely on their old ways of control. Their empire was crumbling, and they had no one but themselves to blame. The humans, with their unyielding resolve, had shattered the elders' illusion of invincibility, and with each new victory, they grew bolder. Soon they would reach the elder homeworld. Soon the elders would have no choice but to face the full force of humanity's power. But there was still a flicker of hope within the elders. Despite their failures, they believed they could still regain control, that they could find a way to stop the humans before it was too late. But that belief was fading, slipping away with every human victory. As Terran watched the humans from his observatory, he knew the truth. The elders had been wrong. They had ignored the warnings, and now they would pay the price for their arrogance. The humans would not be stopped. Their rise had only just begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. The humans had come, and they had come to stay. And for the elders, it was already too late to stop them. The final warning had been ignored. Now, the consequences of that decision began to unravel in the most terrifying way. The humans, once thought to be a fleeting presence in the vast galaxy, were now an unstoppable force, and the elders were about to face the full weight of their mistake. It started with a simple message. The humans, having secured several strategic positions, sent a communication to the elders. At first, the message seemed like a formality, a mere gesture from a species that was finally beginning to understand the magnitude of what they had provoked. But the elders quickly realized that it was much more than that. It wasn't just a communication, it was a declaration. "We've come for what's ours," the message began. The tone was calm, almost too calm, as if the humans were not at all worried about the consequences of this bold move. "You had your chance to stop us. Now, you will learn that we are no longer the prey, we are the hunters." The elders stared in silence as the message ended. For the first time in centuries, they were faced with something they couldn't predict, something that defied logic. They had known conflict, but this was something different. This wasn't a war for territory. It wasn't a battle for resources. This was a fight for supremacy. Humanity wasn't just pushing into their space, they were declaring their intent to take it all, and the elders had no idea how to respond. In the war rooms of the Elder Council, tensions reached a boiling point. Elder Kale, once the most confident of them all, now stood at the head of a room filled with anxious faces. His hands were clasped tightly behind his back as he stared at the holographic map of the galaxy. It was dotted with human colonies, their fleets expanding rapidly. There was no stopping them now. "What do we do?" one of the elders asked, her voice cracking with disbelief. "We've never faced anything like this. How could we have been so wrong?" "We underestimated them," Kale replied, his voice heavy with regret. "And now we must face the consequences." The meeting was a blur of ideas, strategies, and counter-strategies, but the elders knew that they couldn't outmatch humanity's relentless growth. The humans had something that the elders had failed to account for: a fierce will to survive, to push forward no matter the cost. Every human defeat was met with a new strategy, a new weapon, a new push forward. Unlike other species, who would break under the pressure of war, the humans seemed to thrive on it. The elders could feel it. The galaxy was shifting beneath their feet. What had once been their empire, an unchallenged domain stretching across countless systems, was now beginning to crumble. The humans had caught them off guard, exploiting every weakness the elders had. Where the elders had taken centuries to build their empire, humanity was dismantling it piece by piece in a matter of months. It wasn't just their technology that made humanity dangerous, it was their unpredictability. The elders had studied species for millennia, and they prided themselves on their ability to predict and control. But humans were different. They didn't play by the rules. They didn't follow the same paths as others. Each human move was a surprise, each human decision a challenge to their power. Soon, the elders realized they were on the verge of a full-scale war, one they hadn't prepared for. They had once prided themselves on being the supreme force in the galaxy. But now they were scrambling to keep up with humanity's fast-paced advancements. In one last desperate move, they gathered their most powerful fleet, hoping to make a stand. They would confront the humans directly, show them the full might of the Elder Empire. But when they arrived at the chosen battleground, they were met with something unexpected. The human fleet, though smaller, was more organized and strategic than they could have imagined. The battle began, and for the first time in Elder history, they found themselves outmatched. The humans didn't just fight to win, they fought with a kind of passion and ingenuity that the elders had never seen before. They didn't simply defend their territory, they attacked relentlessly, with every resource they had at their disposal. The elders' ships, once regarded as invincible, were now being overwhelmed by human firepower. It was not a battle of strength alone, but of adaptability. The humans' ability to learn, to adjust, to innovate in the heat of battle was a force the elders could not counter. The Elder fleet, so sure of its superiority, now found itself retreating in the face of an enemy that was determined to wipe them out. As the battle raged on, Terran stood alone in his observatory, watching in silence. His heart ached, but he knew this was the inevitable outcome. The elders had been given the chance to act, to heed his warning, and now they were paying the price. What terrified him most wasn't just the loss of the Elder Empire, it was the realization that humanity wasn't interested in mere conquest. They wanted more. The humans wanted to reshape the galaxy in their image, to break free from the chains that had once bound them to the edges of space. They were no longer fighting for survival, they were fighting for control. And the elders, so blinded by their arrogance, had left the door wide open for humanity to claim it. In the end, the elders were forced to watch as humanity, once an insignificant species, rose to claim the power that had once been theirs. It was a painful reality, one that Terran had seen coming, but it didn't make it any easier to accept. The galaxy was no longer the elders' domain, it was humanity's, and the elders were just spectators, left to witness the rise of a new force that had been born out of their own mistakes. Humanity had come, and it was now their galaxy to rule. The elders could no longer deny it. The war was no longer about stopping humanity, it was about survival. The elders had underestimated humans, believing them to be nothing more than a passing threat. But now, they were a powerful force that had grown too strong to ignore. With every passing day, humanity's empire expanded, and the elders found themselves retreating, clinging to what little power they had left. The Elder Council had gathered once again, but this time there was no room for pride or arrogance. The faces that had once held confidence and power were now filled with doubt and fear. They knew the time for diplomacy had passed. They had tried to reason with humanity, tried to convince them to turn back. But now, there was only one path, left: total war. Elder Kale stood at the head of the council, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. The weight of failure pressed down on him, but he knew the stakes were too high to give up. Humanity had taken too much, and they were not going to stop until they had everything. The elders had no choice now. They would either fight to the end, or face extinction. "We cannot run anymore," Kale said, his voice hoarse but firm. "We've lost too much already. Our fleets are scattered. Our colonies are falling. If we don't take a stand now, there will be nothing left." The other elders nodded in agreement, their faces grim. But even in this moment of despair, there was still a flicker of hope, a hope that humanity might still be stopped. After all, the elders had always believed they were the superior species in the galaxy. They had the knowledge, the power, and the resources to overcome any enemy. But that belief had been shattered by the relentless rise of humanity. "We need to hit them where it hurts," Elder Thaler said, his voice low and measured. "We've studied their tactics. We know their weaknesses. They may be unpredictable, but they are still fallible." Kale turned his gaze to the holographic display at the center of the room. The image of the human fleet hovered above the table, growing larger with each passing day. The humans were advancing toward the Elder homeworld, and if they succeeded, there would be no stopping them. It was the Elders' last stronghold, the heart of their empire. If the humans took it, they would control everything. "We have to destroy their fleets before they reach our homeworld," Kale continued. "We must strike now, before it's too late." The council members exchanged uneasy glances. They knew the risk. If they failed, their empire would be lost forever. But if they didn't act, they would lose everything. There was no other choice. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, the humans were preparing for the final push. They had come a long way from their humble beginnings. Their fleets, once small and underpowered, were now vast and formidable. The humans had learned from every battle, adapting their strategies and improving their technology at an unprecedented rate. And now, they were poised to strike at the heart of the Elder Empire. Captain Leela Matthews stood at the helm of the flagship, staring out into the vast expanse of space. She had seen countless battles in her career, but this one felt different. The stakes were higher, the tension greater. This wasn't just about winning a war, it was about securing humanity's future. "We're almost there," Leela said to her crew, her voice steady but filled with determination. "Once we take their homeworld, we'll be unstoppable. This is humanity's moment." Her crew nodded, their faces grim but resolute. They had been through hell to get here, but they were ready for whatever came next. They had faced the elders in battle, and each time they had grown stronger. Now they had the upper hand. They had the element of surprise, and they had the will to win. As the human fleet advanced, the elders launched their final defense. Their ships, once the pride of their empire, surged forward in a desperate attempt to stop humanity's advance. But it was too late. The humans were prepared. The battle raged across the stars, each side giving everything they had. But the elders were no longer the dominant force. They were losing, and they knew it. The Elder fleet tried to fight back with all its might, but the humans' adaptability and relentless determination proved to be their greatest strength. The human ships moved with precision, their tactics outsmarting the Elders at every turn. The Elder ships, once feared and respected, were now falling one by one, their massive hulls breaking apart as the humans closed in for the final strike. In the chaos of the battle, Kale's voice crackled over the communication system. "This is our last chance. We cannot let them take our homeworld. Rally every remaining ship. We fight until the end." But it was no use. The humans had already broken through the Elder defenses. With a final, devastating blow, the Elder flagship was destroyed. The last of the Elder's forces scattered, their ships retreating in a desperate attempt to escape the inevitable. As the dust settled, Captain Leela Matthews stood at the helm of her ship, watching as the Elder fleet crumbled before them. Humanity had won, against all odds. Against the most powerful empire the galaxy had ever known, humanity had emerged victorious. "We did it," Lila whispered to herself, her heart pounding with adrenaline. "This is just the beginning. With the Elders' defeat, humanity's rise to power was complete. They had taken the galaxy, not through brute force alone, but through their unwavering resolve and determination. The Elders had been given a chance to stop them, but they had refused to listen. Now, the galaxy was in the hands of humanity, and there was no turning back. The future was theirs. The galaxy had shifted. The balance of power, once firmly held by the Elders, now teetered in the hands of humanity. But despite the overwhelming victory, the path ahead was uncertain. The Elders had been vanquished, but the consequences of their fall were far from over. Humanity had claimed a victory, but at what cost? The war was not truly over. It had only just begun. Captain Leela Matthews stood on the bridge of the flagship, staring out at the vast expanse of space. The stars seemed different now, distant, cold. She had fought in countless battles, but there was something about this one that felt different. It wasn't just about winning, it was about defining the future. Humanity had taken control, yes, but they had also inherited a galaxy scarred by years of conflict, a galaxy now under their watch. Captain, the fleet is ready. The voice of her second-in-command broke her reverie. We've secured the Elder homeworld, but there are still pockets of resistance. The remaining Elder forces are regrouping on the outer systems. Leela turned slowly to face her crew. They had just defeated the mightiest empire the galaxy had ever known. But now came the real challenge, maintaining control. What followed victory was always harder than the battle itself. The Elders were not gone entirely, they were fractured, hiding in the outer systems, plotting for revenge. Their power had crumbled, but their influence, their legacy, remained. We can't let our guard down, Leela said, her voice resolute. The Elders will never accept defeat. We've earned this victory, but they won't surrender easily. We must press forward. We need to secure their systems and ensure that their legacy is eradicated once and for all. Her words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of responsibility. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. There were still worlds to conquer, still enemies lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike back. Humanity had taken the first step toward ruling the galaxy, but the journey ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges that none of them had anticipated. On the surface of the Elder homeworld, the mood was bleak. Once a thriving metropolis, now a desolate ruin, the planet stood as a testament to the Elders' once great empire. The Elder capital city, once filled with grandeur, lay in ruins. Its towering structures had been reduced to rubble, the echoes of an empire that had fallen. In a single, swift strike, the humans had invaded, yes, but they had also inherited something much more complicated, a fractured world and a people who would not go quietly into the night. Leela stood outside the main city, overlooking the destruction. She had seen countless war-torn worlds in her career, but there was something haunting about this one. The Elders were not just a race defeated, they were a symbol of something larger. The fall of the Elders meant the collapse of an entire order, a power that had ruled for millennia, and now humanity was tasked with rebuilding, but in a way that they could never have imagined. Captain, a voice called from behind her. Leela turned to see her commanding officer approaching. The remaining Elder leaders have been located. They are in hiding, but we've tracked their location. They won't be able to escape. Leela nodded, but her thoughts were elsewhere. The Elders were beaten, but the real question was, could humanity rise to the occasion? Could they rule this galaxy in a way that was different from the Elders, or would they become just another empire destined to fall? I've seen the darkness that comes with power, she muttered. We've won this battle, but if we're not careful, we could become the very thing we fought against. Her second-in-command, Commander Jace, raised an eyebrow. What do you mean, Captain? Look around us. Leela gestured to the ruins of the Elder city. The Elders ruled through fear and control, but look at what that led to. An empire crumbled under the weight of its own arrogance. Now, we have to rebuild this galaxy, but we must do so differently. We cannot become another version of the Elders. If we do, we'll eventually fall the same way they did, Jace thought. For a moment, then nodded in agreement. You're right, but how do we make sure that doesn't happen? How do we rebuild without falling into the same traps? Leela sighed, her gaze drifting toward the stars. I don't know yet, but we need to be smarter than they were. We need to learn from their mistakes. Meanwhile, far away in the outer systems, the Elders' remnants were already planning their comeback. They had suffered a crushing defeat, but their resolve was far from broken. They had retreated into the shadows, biding their time, waiting for the opportunity to strike. The Elders knew that humanity had taken their place, but they were determined to ensure that the humans' reign would not last. They would never accept their fall from power. The last vestiges of their empire still held a glimmer of hope, and they were preparing to use that hope to ignite a new conflict, a conflict that would send ripples throughout the galaxy. The war was far from over. In fact, the real fight was just beginning. Back on the Elder homeworld, Lila couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. Humanity had won, yes, but they had inherited a galaxy teeming with secrets, resentment, and a power vacuum that could quickly turn into chaos. The Elders were down, but they were not out, and as much as humanity had gained, there was a darker force lurking in the depths, waiting for its moment to rise. The next battle was not going to be fought with weapons, it would be fought with the will of the galaxy itself, and humanity, though victorious, would have to prove that they were worthy of the power they had claimed. Humanity had claimed the stars, but now, it seemed they were caught in a struggle of their own making. Victory over the Elders had not been the end, it had only ignited a new conflict, one that no one had fully anticipated. The Elders were broken, scattered, but their influence still lingered in the corners of the galaxy. The real fight was no longer about defeating an old empire. It was about what would come after, about whether humanity could live up to the weight of the galaxy they now controlled. The first sign of trouble came from the inner systems. The Elders, though crushed in their homeworld, had left behind a network of loyalists, small factions scattered across the galaxy, those who had clung to the old ways, who refused to accept the fall of their people. These remnants, though fragmented, were dangerous, hidden in plain sight, biding their time. They were the Elders' last hope to retake what had been lost. Lila Matthews, captain of the human flagship, paced the bridge. Despite their success, the victory felt hollow. There was no sense of triumph in her heart. Instead, there was only the weight of the unknown. Humanity had taken the place of the Elders, but what now? They were surrounded by galaxies full of unrest, broken planets still recovering from centuries of Elder rule, and factions that refused to accept their dominance. The humans had barely begun their reign, and already cracks were starting to show. "Captain, we've detected unusual activity in the Outer Rim," reported Commander J. "There's been a series of unexplained ship movements, small, stealthy, and well-coordinated. We believe it's a Elder Loyalist faction, operating in the shadows." Lila stopped pacing and turned sharply toward the screen. Her mind raced as she processed the information. The Elders had fallen, but clearly, their spirits still clung to the galaxy. Humanity's newfound power had attracted enemies they hadn't fully anticipated, those who would never accept the fall of the old order. "Send a fleet to investigate. We need to know exactly what we're dealing with," Leela ordered. "We can't let these factions gather strength. If we let them grow, we risk everything we've fought for." Her voice was calm, but inside, her mind was frantic. She had seen the chaos that the Elders' empire had left in its wake. The power vacuum was vast, and where there was power, there was always the potential for conflict. The galaxy was fractured, divided into factions, old alliances now broken and new ones forming in the shadows. The struggle for control was far from over, and humanity, though victorious, was not guaranteed to hold on to the power they had seized. The fleet moved swiftly, its sleek ships cutting through the darkness of space. Lila watched as the ships advanced toward the Outer Rim, a quiet tension filling the air. They knew they were stepping into unknown territory, into a conflict that might spiral into something much larger than anyone had predicted. The Elder Loyalists were small in number, but they had been plotting for years. Their hatred for humanity's rise was palpable, and now, they were preparing to strike back. As the human ships approached, a transmission came through, static crackling in the background. The voice on the other end was low, raspy, filled with anger. "Do not think you have one, humans. You have merely inherited the ruins of an empire. The Elders will rise again. We will take back what is ours, and you will see that humanity is nothing more than a passing storm in the galaxy's long history." Lila listened, her jaw tightening. It wasn't just a threat, it was a declaration of war. The Elder Loyalists weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for the return of the old order. They were fighting for a chance to crush the humans and reclaim their power. This was no longer just a war for territory, it was a war for the very soul of the galaxy. "Intercept their transmissions," Lila ordered, her voice steady. "I want to know everything, their numbers, their plans. We cannot afford to be blindsided." The battle that followed was fierce. The Elder Loyalists fought with desperation, throwing everything they had at the human fleet. But the humans were relentless. They had learned from their previous encounters. They had the upper hand, and they used it with precision. The Elders may have controlled the galaxy for millennia, but humanity was not bound by the same old rules. The humans adapted quickly, using unconventional tactics, exploiting weaknesses in the Elders' former strategies. For hours, the battle raged. The human fleet moved with calculated precision, their ships darting in and out of the fray, evading the Loyalist fire, striking when least expected. It was clear that the Elders, Loyalists, though fierce and determined, were no match for humanity's ingenuity. One by one, their ships were destroyed, their hidden strongholds dismantled. But despite their victories, the humans knew this was not the end. This was only one battle in a much larger war, a war that would define their future. As the last of the Elder Loyalists were driven back into the outer reaches of the galaxy, Leela couldn't help but wonder, had they truly won, or had they simply delayed the inevitable? In the aftermath of the battle, the human fleet began to regroup. The victory was significant, but it had come at a cost. The scars of war were visible on every ship, every face. Humanity had proven they could fight and win, but there was still so much uncertainty ahead. The Elders had been defeated, but the galaxy was still filled with remnants of their empire, filled with enemies who would never accept the new order. Lila stood on the bridge, looking out at the stars. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The galaxy had changed, yes, but would humanity be the ones to shape its future? Or would they fall victim to the same cycle of power that had consumed the Elders? One thing was certain. The road ahead was uncertain, and humanity's true test had only just begun. The silence after the battle was deafening. The stars outside the ship's windows seemed to burn brighter. But to Leela Matthews, they felt colder, distant reminders of the deep uncertainty humanity now faced. The remnants of the Elders were scattered, their Loyalist forces shattered, but that only served to deepen the weight on her shoulders. The war for control of the galaxy wasn't over. It had merely entered a new phase. There was no real victory, yet not in the way the humans had imagined. When they first rose up against the Elders, humanity had claimed the galaxy, but the cost was far greater than anyone had anticipated. The Elders, broken and in hiding, were only one faction in a universe filled with countless others who still feared humanity's rise. The galaxy, once a peaceful place ruled by the Elders, was now a battleground. The fight for dominance wasn't about victory, it was about survival. And humanity, for all its strength, was still learning what it meant to lead, to truly control. On the flagship's bridge, Lila stood before a large holographic map, scanning the vast regions of the galaxy. It was easy to look at the expansive stretch of space and believe that humanity had won. The Elder homeworld had fallen, the Loyalist factions were broken, but as the map pulsed with light, she knew that each blinking dot was a potential flashpoint for the next conflict. A quiet voice pulled her from her thoughts. "Captain, we've received a transmission from the Council. They're demanding a meeting to discuss the future of the galaxy," Commander Jace said, his tone careful. Leela didn't need to ask who the Council was. It was a collection of the major galactic powers, empires, colonies, and factions that had watched humanity's rise with suspicion. They hadn't intervened during the war with the Elders, but that didn't mean they were willing to let humans run unchecked. They, too, had ambitions, and now, humanity's position in the galaxy was a question of balance. "Put it through," she said, her voice steady but filled with the uncertainty she couldn't shake. The hologram flickered to life, and the council members appeared in a display of figures, each of them from a different race, from different regions of space, each holding their own set of interests. The one who spoke first was a tall, imposing figure, his skin dark and shimmering with an unnatural glow. "Captain Matthews," he began, his voice smooth, but tinged with a quiet menace. "Humanity has claimed the Elder homeworld. You've driven them into hiding, but let us make one thing clear. We will not allow you to take control of the galaxy with force. The galaxy is not yours to command." Lila's gaze hardened as she listened. She could sense the weight behind his words. This was more than a warning. It was a challenge. "We don't seek control," Lila replied, her voice calm but firm. "We seek peace. We've learned that from the Elders. If we take control, it's because no one else has proven capable of leading without plunging the galaxy into chaos." The council members exchanged glances, some nodding, others shaking their heads. The tall figure continued, his eyes narrowing. "You may have defeated the Elders, but you've yet to prove you can hold the galaxy together. Your victory was won with bloodshed, and there are factions that will never accept your rule. Your people will have to answer for the cost of that victory." Leela felt a chill creep up her spine. This was not about the Elders. This was about something bigger, humanity's place in the universe. Humanity had taken power, yes, but would they be able to hold it? Would the galaxy allow it? Would it tear itself apart under the weight of that ambition? We understand the stakes, Leela replied, her voice cutting through the tension. But we are not the elders. We are not interested in dominating the galaxy. We are interested in ensuring that this galaxy doesn't fall back into the same cycle of corruption and war. It's not about us claiming the throne, it's about ensuring no one else has the chance to destroy everything again. The council was silent for a long moment. The tall figure leaned back in his seat, considering her words. You speak of peace, Captain Matthews, but peace is fragile, and power, once taken, is never easily relinquished. You will soon learn that, no matter how powerful humanity becomes, the forces that drive the galaxy will never bend to your will without a fight. Leela's pulse quickened. She could feel the weight of their threat in every word. But she would not back down. I will fight for peace, she said, her voice filled with determination. But I will also fight to defend humanity's place in this galaxy. We're not asking for your permission. We're showing you what we're capable of. The council leader's expression darkened. The message was clear. Humanity was no longer just a rising power. They had reached a point where they could no longer avoid the consequences of their actions. They had taken control, but now they would have to prove they could hold it. The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge silent. Lila stood, her hands gripping the edge of the console. She could feel the weight of the galaxy pressing down on her. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be no more easy victories, no more moments of triumph. The battle for control was only beginning, and now humanity had to walk the line between power and peace. We've made our stand, Commander Jace said quietly, coming to stand. Beside her, the galaxy will test us, Captain, but we've proven that humanity is not to be underestimated. Lila nodded, her eyes hardening as she stared at the stars beyond. The galaxy was vast, and the threats that lay within it were as endless as the stars themselves. The elders had been defeated, yes, but the true war had just begun. Humanity would have to fight not just to survive, but to build a future one, where they could rule with wisdom, not fear. And whether they succeeded or failed, the galaxy would never forget the rise of humanity.